Welcome to the Accelerate Positivity podcast on social and emotional learning, aka SEL. Here, you will learn from wellness and SEL experts about how to increase positivity and decrease negativity in your life. You'll be an SEL expert in no time.
Welcome everyone, I'm John Paul Leslie, a Public Allies AmeriCorps member. My guest is Casa teacher Tom Reardon, and today we will be discussing boredom and its connection with SEL concepts.
Thanks for having me today. I'm Tom Reardon, and I'm a teacher by trade. I've been teaching in one form or another for a very long time now. I started working for Casa in 1997 as a prevention specialist and would go into classrooms and do programs for kindergarten through, in my career at Casa, I worked with kindergarten through 12th grade. I worked in college classrooms. I even did some preschool classrooms. And worked with lots and lots of teachers. So I've worked with just about every age group, teaching different ways to keep yourself safe, and through sexual violence prevention, bullying prevention, and over the last 10 years or so, focused primarily on social and emotional learning. When I'm not working with Casa, I'm also a classroom teacher, and right now I teach kindergarteners, first, second, and fourth graders, computer science, and also music classes. So I've run the gamut, my friend.
Oh, wow. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you would define boredom and how it affects human emotions?
Oh, wow, yeah. So boredom, when you talk about that, it makes me think about being a kid again. And boredom was sort of like that, like the old West gunslinger who had his trusty 6-gun in his holster. And, the minute like something wasn't going your way as a kid, you could pull that out and be like, I'm bored. And it's such an interesting feeling because it's a natural human emotion. Everybody gets it. And, I'm even convinced as an animal owner that my pets get it, especially the cats. But,
Well, yes.
but, and when boredom happens, sometimes it can turn quickly into inspiration, right? Because you realize, hey, I'm getting bored with this. You have a couple of choices. You can dwell in that feeling of boredom, which is not a fun feeling. It's a pretty uncomfortable feeling, and it's kind of a heavy feeling. I feel like if feelings were part of neighborhoods, like boredom would live in the same neighborhood as frustration. Like their neighbors, they share a cup of sugar together. They knock on each other's door and say, "Oh, did you deal with this today? It was so boring."
That's a good
story. So, but one of the most freeing things somebody said to me many years ago, and I wish I could say who, was I was complaining about being bored, and somebody said, well, boredom's a choice. And I thought about it, I chewed on that for a while, and I was like, what do you mean boredom's a choice? Like, I feel bored, I can't help it. But what it comes down to is you have a choice of what you do with that feeling. Just like we have a choice of how we deal with any emotion, boredom's one that we actually have a lot of power over. And it was a very freeing thing to hear boredom's a choice. And now I don't get bored. If I get that feeling, I do something else.
So you mentioned you do something else. What are some of the best ways to utilize social and emotional learning strategies to cope with boredom?
I think first of all, is that kind of self-awareness, right? Being aware that I'm starting to feel bored with something, whether it's, something as benign as you're watching a TV show and you're like, I don't really care about what happens in this TV show. I'm bored right now. Well, change the channel, or do something different. Read a book, or draw something, or write something, or do something creative, or play a game. But I think going back to your question though, is being that level of self-awareness to say, okay, I'm getting that familiar feeling of being bored. So remembering I have a choice, right? I can dwell in this boredom, and sometimes we all need a little bit of a mental break, and we might just kind of hang out in that boredom for a while. and realize that it's turning into relaxing or de-stressing, decompressing. But with, when it comes to working with students and talking about kind of different ways of dealing with boredom, the first thing I tell them is like, you've got a beautiful weapon against boredom and it's at the top of your neck. You can imagine anything, you can think about anything you want. So if you're bored right now, think about something else, or think about what would make this not boring. And the next thing you know, you forgot that you were bored because you're too busy thinking about not being bored. So self-awareness plays a role, and also self-management plays a role too. Figuring out like, hey, I've got some power here. I can do something a little different. And also it might mean like reaching out to a friend and talking. So, building some of those relationship skills is another great way, and building your social awareness too. Imagine what you look like when you're bored sometimes.
So that leads me to my next question. It's you brought up that it's good to distress every now and then. So is being bored necessarily a bad thing, or where would you draw the line between having something to do constantly and being in that moment where you could be bored and having some possible time to relax and rejuvenate? Where's the line? Where do you see that?
Well, I would be reluctant to say that any feeling is a bad feeling, because we have so many, and I think in the English language there's over 3,000 words to describe how you feel.
Yeah.
So, and that list keeps growing too. But I think I like that you brought up that avoiding boredom isn't always having something to do. I know it might feel that way when you're younger, like I gotta go. But sometimes we do need to just relax a bit, and whether that's lying down on if it's nice outside and you lie down on the grass, you watch the clouds go by, or you mentioned to me that you're going to be doing some painting this weekend, and sometimes just watching the paint dry is what we need to do, right? We need to slow it down. So I think understanding, like, even sometimes you might be bored of doing too much, and that's a sign that says, hey, it's time to take a break, take a time out, and just kind of be quiet and still for a while, which for some folks I know is really hard. And that's where you get into kind of, again, knowing like, all right, I might need to use some mindful breaths and kind of slow down my brain a little bit. So a mindful breath, what I teach students is, breathing in through your nose, holding that breath for a minute, and then breathing out through your mouth, which is a really great way to calm yourself down. And it can work for so many things, but even with boredom, it can work sometimes to slow down our brains and kind of regulate ourselves to get to that point where we can go, oh, okay, I can refocus now and put my energy into something I want to do.
Perfect. I know this is a little off course, but do you have any more stress busters for us? Anything that could help break us, break that boredom?
Well, I think, again, it kind of goes to what you're interested in, right? And what you, what you like. I am a big fan of doing something creative when if I start to feel that sort of boredom with something where it's like, I just can't do this anymore. And it's kind of drawing, it's frustrating me. It's drawing, it feels like, it's sucking the oxygen out of the room. And, so kind of refocusing and just, for me, I like to write a lot. So maybe I'll sit down and I'll kind of mess around with some ideas writing wise. I also play music. So for me, it's I can cure boredom really fast by picking up the guitar and just kind of tinkering around a little bit on it. So I would say, if you have, for people, who have hobbies and interests, like, it's a great way to get out of it. Maybe you've been working on, some people like to build models, right? So maybe you've been working on a tough model. So you sit down and, glue a few new pieces on, or do a puzzle, or a lot of young and older folks like to play a video game or something. So it's something just to kind of reset your mind. Like, I'm a big fan of Sudoku too. Like, when I'm kind of working on something and it's like, oh, I can't look at this anymore. It's like, but I can do a Sudoku and it kind of resets my brain. So for some people it might be baking, or might be taking the dog for a walk, or having a conversation, calling up a friend and saying, "What's up?"
So basically finding something you like to do, and then just going after it and doing it, or something that's relaxing.
Laying down is nice sometimes too.
Yeah, sometimes just doing nothing's the best remedy.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to thank you for joining us today, Tom. But before we go, I want to ask one more question. What are some good resources for our listeners to tune into to learn more about SEL, to learn more about concepts?
Sure. So resources that you can check out to learn more about SEL, which is the best one I think by far is casel.org, which is CASEL.org. And Casel, not only is it great in terms of the information you can get there about social emotional learning, but it also has links to every other great SEL site as well. So Casel's they're not greedy about it. They're going to share all the resources too, because there's a number of universities, for example, that are doing amazing work with social emotional learning. Harvard is doing amazing work. Rutgers is doing amazing work. So you can get all those links from the Casel site, and also you can get a link to Casel from our Casa site, which is casacares.org as well. So please visit us there, and we can help there as well.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, John Paul.